My name is Emily Peterson. I was 6 when my parents decided I wasn't worth the trouble and dropped me off at a state-run orphanage like I was someone else's trash. Now they're back, but only because my name is on a $3 million inheritance. Before I dive into the moment everything shattered, tell me, where in the world are you watching this video from? I love seeing all the places these stories travel. Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's get into this together. It was December in Cincinnati, and the living room was always too hot. The old radiator hissed in the corner, but the heat never reached the cold in that room. Not between them. I sat cross-legged on the couch, still in my school jumper, a juice box untouched beside me. My legs stuck to the pleather cushions, but I didn't dare move. Not with them yelling like that. "You think I don't know about her?" my mom snapped, pacing in angry circles like she couldn't hold still or she'd explode. My dad didn't even flinch. "Oh, come off it, Angie. You were checked out the moment things got hard. You hated this life first." That's the part that always stuck with me. This life. Like it was a coat that didn't fit anymore. He grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, like he'd already made up his mind before the shouting even began. The kind of decision adults make in secret, long before kids ever get a clue. I blinked fast, trying to keep my expression blank. That's what I'd learned by then. Don't cry, don't talk, don't be noticed. "I'm done," he muttered, barely glancing my way. And then the door slammed so hard it made the snow shake loose from the roof. My mom stood frozen. Her eyes were red, but her face had that stiff, cold look like stone pretending to be skin. And then she turned to me. Her voice was flat, not even angry, just finished. "You'll be better off in state care." I didn't know what that meant, not really. But my stomach twisted into a knot that never quite untied. I clutched the hem of my sleeve, trying to disappear into the couch cushions. I waited for her to take it back. I waited for anything, tears, apology, maybe just a second look. Instead, she walked into the kitchen, lit a cigarette, and turned on the radio like it was just another Tuesday. That night, she didn't tuck me in. She didn't say goodnight. She didn't even look at me. And when the knock came, a uniformed woman with a clipboard and sad eyes, I kept thinking it's a mistake. Mommy's just mad. Daddy will come back, but no one did. The orphanage was beige. I remember that more than anything. Beige walls, beige floors, beige food. Like sadness had its own color and they painted everything in it. They gave me a metal bunk and a brown fleece blanket. I asked if I could bring my teddy bear. They didn't answer, but I stuffed him under my arm anyway and clutched him like a lifeline. The other kids didn't talk much at first. They just stared, whispered. "She's the new one," a girl hissed behind a cupped hand. "She looks weird." "Why's she so quiet?" I wasn't weird. I was just trying to breathe without falling apart. I didn't cry. I wouldn't let myself. If I started, I knew I wouldn't stop. The first night, the snow hit the windows in soft, steady thumps. I imagined it was my dad, knocking to take me home. I stayed awake for hours waiting, but all I heard was snoring from the top bunk and the creak of footsteps outside my door. I was 6 years old, and already I knew what it felt like to be left behind. The days bled into each other like smudged crayon lines, gray on gray. In the orphanage, time didn't move forward. It looped. Wake up, line up, eat, survive. Some kids clung to each other in tight, unspoken alliances. Others sharpened their words like weapons and aimed them at the smallest target in the room. Usually me. "You're too quiet," one boy sneered, flicking my ear as I passed him on the way to the lunchroom. "She's probably dumb," a girl laughed, tugging at my ponytail so hard it made my eyes sting. I never fought back. What would be the point? If I made a scene, I'd be the problem, and I'd already been called that once. So I kept my head down, kept to myself, and clung to the only soft thing I had left, a tattered teddy bear with one glass eye and fur worn thin at the seams. His name was Mr. Waffles. He didn't talk, but he never left. Some nights I'd whisper to him when the others were asleep. "Do you think they miss me?" He never answered, but I liked to pretend he nodded. The rain was heavy the day they came. I remember it because the leaky gutter outside the rec room window made a sound like ticking, tick, tick, tick. Like time had finally started again. I was sitting on the floor helping a little boy named Jeremy tie his shoes. He was 4, maybe, couldn't quite grasp the bunny ear method yet. No one usually helped. The staff were overworked, and the older kids, well, kindness wasn't their currency. But I saw him struggling, brow furrowed, lip trembling, and something inside me stirred. I'd known that feeling of needing help and not daring to ask, so I crouched down beside him. "Like this," I whispered, looping the laces slowly. "Over, around, through." He looked at me like I'd just shown him a magic trick. That's when I noticed the couple in the doorway. They didn't say anything, just stood there, watching. The man had soft brown eyes and hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. The woman wore a scarf that matched her smile, warm and a little hopeful, like she was afraid to hope too much. I looked away, suddenly embarrassed. My sleeves were too short and I hadn't brushed my hair that morning. Who would pick me? Later that night, during dinner, one of the staff pulled me aside. "Emily," she said, kneeling to my level. "Do you remember the couple who visited this afternoon?" I nodded, staring at my shoes. One lace was still perfectly tied. "They'd like to get to know you better." That sentence didn't make sense. People didn't get to know me. They left me, or ignored me, or looked through me. But I nodded again. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, even if it was just a polite visit. The first time I sat with Linda and Gary Peterson in the social room, I didn't speak more than 5 words. I was too busy watching them. Gary had a laugh that startled me the first time I heard it, loud and honest, like it came from his whole chest. Linda brought me a small box of crayons and a notebook. "I thought you might like to draw," she said, placing them on the table like an offering. I did. But I didn't tell her that. Not yet. Instead, I opened the box and sorted the colors by shade. Purple, my favorite, went at the top. "You're very organized," Linda smiled, watching me. I shrugged. But inside, something fluttered. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. The visits continued, short, careful, like testing the water before diving in. They asked about school, favorite books, food I liked. Linda always remembered to bring tissues in her purse. Gary always remembered how many sugars I took in my tea, even though I never told him. They saw me. Not the quiet girl who never talked, not the problem child, not the cast-off, just me. And then one afternoon, after a particularly long visit, Linda reached across the table and placed her hand gently on mine. "We'd like to adopt you, Emily," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "If you'd like that too." My heart thudded so loud I was afraid they'd hear it. "Will I get to keep Mr. Waffles?" I asked. Gary laughed. "He can ride in the front seat with you." The night before I left the orphanage, I sat on my bunk and traced the peeling paint on the wall. I wasn't sure what I felt. Hope, fear, both. I didn't cry. Not even when Jeremy hugged my leg and told me not to forget him. Instead, I whispered into Mr. Waffles' fur, "We're going home." And this time, I believed it. The Petersons lived in a quiet neighborhood in suburban Ohio where the houses looked like they belonged to stories with happy endings. 2-car garages, porch swings, mailboxes shaped like barns. I remember gripping Mr. Waffles tighter as we pulled into their driveway. The house was yellow, with green shutters and a wind chime that danced every time the breeze nudged it. "This is your home now," Linda said softly, turning around from the front seat. Home. That word had always felt like something other people got to say. Not me. Inside, everything smelled like vanilla and laundry detergent. Warm. Real. Not like the orphanage's bleach and boiled potatoes. Their golden retriever buddy came bounding down the hall with floppy ears and eyes that looked like they understood too much. He sat beside me, tail thumping the floor. "He likes you already," Gary grinned. I didn't answer. But I reached out and touched Buddy's fur just to see if this part of the dream was real. It was. My room had lavender walls. Not pink, not the too sweet kind people always think little girls want, but soft, soothing lavender. Like someone had actually asked what color made me feel safe. A twin bed with a white comforter. Bookshelves with space waiting to be filled. A little desk by the window. And on the pillow, a new stuffed animal. "He's not a replacement," Linda said, noticing how I froze in the doorway. "Just a friend for Mr. Waffles." I nodded. Carefully placed the new bear beside the old one. I didn't name him, not yet. The first few nights were the hardest. I slept with the door cracked open just in case they changed their minds. Sometimes I'd wake up from dreams I couldn't remember and sneak out to sit on the stairs, listening for signs of life. Linda would find me there, every time. She never got mad. Just sat beside me in her robe and fuzzy slippers, holding a cup of tea in one hand and rubbing my back with the other. "You're safe," she'd whisper. "We're not going anywhere." It took a while before I believed her. Gary taught me how to ride a bike. That summer, the sun seemed to shine just for me. He held onto the seat and jogged behind me down the sidewalk, panting but never letting go until I asked him to. "Ready?" he'd call. "Not yet," I'd yell, terrified of falling. But eventually, I stopped saying it. Eventually, I flew. When I turned around and saw him standing yards behind me, arms in the air, I panicked and crashed into a bush. My knee bled, and I started to cry, not because of the scrape, but because I thought the magic would end now. Instead, Gary laughed, scooped me up, and said, "Now you know you can do hard things." School was a new kind of mountain. I was behind in reading, clumsy with math. Linda sat with me every night at the kitchen table, patient as a saint, helping me sound out each syllable and draw each number. "Sound it out, sweet pea," she'd say. "Cat up pup hill caterpillar," she'd finish, smiling. I didn't just catch up. I started to soar. By 5th grade, I was in the advanced reading group. By 6th, I was tutoring younger kids. I used to think being left behind would be the headline of my story. But slowly, in this house with the lavender walls, I realized I wasn't lost anymore. One night, Linda tucked me in and smoothed the hair from my forehead. She still did that even as I got older, like it was a ritual neither of us could quite give up. "You're growing into such a strong young woman," she said. I blinked at her, heart thudding. That word again. Woman me, but she wasn't wrong. I'd started speaking up more, asking questions, holding my head a little higher in the lunch line. I was learning how to belong. By senior year, everything in my world had finally begun to feel steady. The banner at my graduation party said, "We're so proud of you, Emily," in giant, glittery letters. Linda hung it herself across the backyard fence, just above the buffet table where Aunt Joan kept refilling the punch bowl like it was her sole calling in life. Gary grilled burgers in his one-dad apron, and Buddy, now older, slower, snored happily beneath a folding chair near the deck. It was one of those rare moments when the world felt like it made sense. Like every bruise, every cold night, every whispered doubt had somehow led here. To this. To family. So when Linda handed me an envelope addressed to Emily Peterson in careful, lawyer-like script, I assumed it was a scholarship confirmation. Maybe something from the college I'd chosen. I smiled, wiped my hands on a napkin, and tore it open without thinking. But what I found inside made my stomach twist. The letterhead read, "Wilkins and Nash, attorneys at law, Lexington, Kentucky." I didn't know anyone in Kentucky. The letter was brief, direct, one paragraph and a business card. "Dear Miss Peterson, we are contacting you regarding the estate of your grandmother, Martha Wilkins, recently deceased. You are named in her last will and testament. A formal reading is scheduled for June 12th at our offices in Lexington. Please reach out to confirm your attendance. With sincere condolences, Edward T. Nash-esque." I must have gone quiet because Linda leaned in. "Sweetheart, what is it?" I held out the paper, not quite trusting my voice. She read it silently, her brow knitting, then looked up. "You didn't know you had a grandmother." I shook my head. "Neither did we," Gary said, walking over. He read the letter over her shoulder, then glanced at me. "Are you okay?" I wasn't sure how to answer that. It felt like a trapdoor had opened under what I thought was solid ground. I had spent years telling myself my past was behind me, sealed like a box I'd long ago packed away. But this was a crack in the lid. That night, after the guests had gone and the backyard lights glowed softly under the stars, I sat on the porch swing with Linda. She sipped her tea and waited. "I don't know if I want to know more," I whispered finally. Linda didn't say anything right away, just watched the wind tug the edges of the banner. "You don't have to," she said. "But you can, and we'll be right beside you if you do." That's the thing about love, the real kind. It doesn't force or beg or guilt. It just stands beside you, whatever you choose. The next morning, I emailed the law office to confirm. 2 weeks later, we packed an overnight bag and drove down to Lexington. I watched the landscape change through the window, Ohio's flat stretches turning to gentle Kentucky hills. Gary told bad road trip jokes. Linda brought snacks. I barely touched mine. At the hotel, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the packet from the law office. My name, Emily Peterson, but the file said heir of Martha Wilkins, a woman I had never met, a name I'd never heard, a legacy I didn't ask for. The Wilkins and Nash law office didn't look like the kind of place where lives were cracked open. It looked elegant, intimidating, carved wooden trim, tall ceilings. A grandfather clock that ticked with an old-world arrogance. I kept thinking it looked more like a museum than a law firm. Linda held my hand in the elevator. Gary stood behind us, tall and steady. My palms were cold. My heart was loud. Just a simple reading of a will, I told myself. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be simple. Nothing that starts with a sealed envelope and ends in a different state ever is. The receptionist gave me a polite smile and motioned toward the waiting area. "Mr. Nash will be with you shortly." We turned, and that's when I saw them. Two people seated near the bay window, both in dark clothing, both too still. Like statues trying not to breathe. Angela and Mark, my biological parents. I hadn't seen them in over a decade. Not since the night snow dusted the sidewalk and my mother lit a cigarette instead of saying goodbye. But I knew them instantly. Mark looked older, worn around the edges with silver in his beard and lines dug deep around his eyes. His suit was crisp, his shoes polished. He looked like someone trying to look successful. Angela was harder to read. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, darker. Her makeup was perfect, but her mouth was tight and her eyes flicked toward me and then away like looking too long might cause damage. My stomach dropped. They were here. Why are they here? Gary stepped protectively in front of me without saying a word. Angela stood first. "Emily," she said, her voice soft but practiced. "You've grown." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Mark stood too, nodding once. "We're glad you came," he said. That stunned me more than I expected. Glad I came, like this was a brunch or a reunion, not the first moment they'd laid eyes on their daughter in 12 years. Linda put a gentle hand on my back. "We'll wait outside if you'd prefer." I shook my head. "No. I want to hear this, all of it." Mr. Nash appeared a few moments later, all professionalism and gray hair. "Miss Peterson, if you'll come this way." I followed him into a conference room lined with dark shelves and green banker's lamps. The kind of room where decisions are made by people who have never had to beg for second chances. We sat across a long, polished table. Angela and Mark settled on one side. I sat opposite them, with Linda and Gary flanking me like emotional armor. Mr. Nash opened a leather folder and cleared his throat. "As executor of the late Martha Wilkins' estate," he began, "it is my duty to formally read her final will and testament aloud and ensure clarity of intent." He glanced at me. "Miss Peterson, you are named as the sole beneficiary." The words hung in the air. Sole, beneficiary. I blinked. I never met her." Mr. Nash nodded solemnly. "Ms. Wilkins made numerous attempts to locate you over the years. Unfortunately, those efforts were obstructed. We believe your biological parents failed to disclose your whereabouts after your placement into state care." I turned slowly to look at them. Angela's face remained frozen. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Of course they had. Mr. Nash handed me a sealed envelope. "Martha left this note for you, in her own handwriting." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. "Dear Emily, if you are reading this, then I have finally succeeded in doing what I should have done years ago, finding you. I never agreed with what Angela and Mark did. I was recovering from surgery when I found out they deplaced you in care, and by the time I tried to intervene, you were gone. I searched. I filed requests. I was blocked at every turn, but I never stopped hoping. You are my granddaughter, and you were never forgotten. This estate, everything I have, is yours. I only wish I could have known you. Love, Martha Wilkins." I read the letter twice, maybe 3 times. And still I couldn't speak, not because of the money, not even because of the house or the name, but because someone who didn't get to hold me or raise me still chose me, searched for me, wrote me a letter with love in every line. My throat burned. Linda reached for my hand. I let her hold it. Across the table, Angela opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She closed it again, looked away. Mark folded his hands tightly. "You're very lucky," he said finally. "Martha had a big heart." I met his eyes. "No," I said. She had integrity, and I think she knew what it meant to fight for family. It was Linda who suggested we get something to eat after the will reading. "You need real food," she said, rubbing my back, "not just emotional calories." We found a cafe 2 blocks away. Quiet, dimly lit, with pale green booths and old jazz humming from the speakers. The kind of place where people whispered and stirred their coffee 5 extra times just to delay hard conversations. I slid into a booth near the window, still clutching Martha's letter like it might disappear if I blinked too long. That's when Angela and Mark walked in. I hadn't invited them, but somehow they knew. Mark gave a slight wave to Linda and Gary, polite, distant, unnecessary. Angela didn't look at anyone. She sat across from me without asking. "I hope it's okay," she said, barely meeting my eyes. Was it? I didn't know. I looked at her for a long time. Her lipstick had faded. Her coat was too expensive for someone who claimed she'd suffered. And yet, I could see exhaustion behind her lashes, something heavy she carried but never unpacked. Mark folded his hands on the table. "We weren't expecting any of this," he said. "We only found out she depassed a few weeks ago." "You mean," I said, voice low, "you only found out she left it all to me?" Silence. Not even the jazz could soften it. Angela cleared her throat. "We didn't come for money." I tilted my head. "Then why are you here?" "We wanted to see you," she said. "To explain," I laughed, not loudly, just a dry, surprised breath I hadn't meant to let out. "Explain what?" I asked. "That you left me in a government building and lit a cigarette on your way out." Angela winced. "I was young," she said. "We were both overwhelmed, no money, no support." "There were options," I said. "You just didn't take them." Mark leaned forward, palms up. "We never stopped thinking about you." "That's funny," I said, "because I stopped thinking about you just to survive." They blinked, like they hadn't expected me to have sharp edges. Angela's voice softened. "Emily, please, we did what we had to do at the time." I felt something twist inside me, part fury, part heartbreak. "Then you live with it," I said. "But don't ask me to make peace with it just because it will brought us back into the same zip code." They sat back. The coffee between us grew cold. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Angela pulled something from her purse. A photo, creased, a baby in a hospital blanket. "You were so small," she whispered, sliding it toward me. "You liked to curl your toes whenever I held you." I stared at it, not at her, just the baby. That baby didn't know what was coming. Didn't know how easily love could be withheld. I slid the photo back across the table. "I've got photos too," I said. "Ones where I'm learning to ride a bike, win spelling bees, graduate. Linda took them, Gary printed them." Angela's lips trembled. "You found a good home," Mark said. "I built one," I corrected, "with people who showed up and stayed." I didn't mean for the tears to rise, but they did. I looked at them, really looked, and all I saw were people trying to rewrite history because it was finally profitable to remember it. "You didn't just leave me," I said. "You erased me, and now that there's a trail of breadcrumbs made of money, you're here." Angela covered her mouth. Mark said nothing. I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy, like they were wading through a past I never asked for. "I wish I could say this meeting helped," I told them. "But honestly, it just reminded me who my real parents are." Linda and Gary were already at the counter, waiting. As I walked past, Gary handed me a napkin. "Just in case," he said gently. Linda wrapped an arm around my shoulder and kissed the side of my head. I leaned into her. For the first time all day, I breathed easy. It arrived 3 days later. A man in a gray polo knocked on our door just after dinner. I thought maybe it was a delivery, something Linda ordered, maybe a new leash for Buddy. But the man didn't smile, didn't ask for a signature. He just handed me a thick envelope and said, "You've been served." For a second, the words didn't register. Then I saw the header. Petition for division of estate, claim of familial right and shared suffering. Filed by Angela and Mark Wilkins. My fingers went cold. The envelope slid from my hands and hit the floor with a flat, heavy sound, like a small betrayal landing in full. Linda bent down and picked it up, already reading. Gary's voice was a low thunder behind me. They did, Linda whispered, flipping through the pages. I sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the wall, at nothing. "They want part of it," I murmured. "They want her money. They're claiming shared hardship," Linda said gently, "that they deserve compensation for what they endured." I laughed, but it came out hollow. Endured, I said. They endured me, Gary paced, fists clenched. They abandoned you, he said, and now they want a payout. I couldn't stop shaking, not from fear, from disbelief. From rage wrapped so tightly around sadness, I couldn't separate the two anymore. They never sent a birthday card, never checked if I made it out of third grade, never showed up to see if I was alive. And now they wanted compensation. I stood up suddenly, too fast. The room swayed. I need air. I walked out the front door and onto the porch, barefoot. The grass was damp with evening dew, and the sky had turned that soft blue-gray that always made me feel like the world was pausing for breath. I sank onto the porch steps and buried my face in my hands. I wasn't crying. Not exactly. I was unraveling. Because the truth was, a tiny part of me, some pathetic, quiet corner of my heart, had hoped that maybe their apology had meant something. Maybe they had changed. Maybe they had regrets that went beyond their own reflection. But this was proof. Written in ink and filed in court. They hadn't come back for me. They came for what I'd been given. I didn't hear Linda step outside until she was beside me. She sat without speaking, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders the way only a mother does, with instinct, not invitation. They don't want me, I whispered. They want the money. She pulled me closer. Then let them want. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the petition like it was a stranger's story. Page after page of twisted phrasing, emotional investment, biological burden, mutual suffering due to separation. As if trauma could be itemized. As if walking away from a child and coming back for a bank account was just a matter of poor timing. Linda brought over hot tea and rested her hand on mine. You don't owe them anything, Emily. I know, I said, but it still hurts. That's the thing no one tells you about cutting ties. It doesn't make you feel free right away. Sometimes it just exposes the nerves. And mine were raw. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday morning in Lexington. The law office chose a neutral location, a tall glass building that smelled like lemon cleaner and ambition. On the 7th floor, in a beige conference room with too much air conditioning, I sat across from the people who gave me life and then walked away from it. Angela wore pearls. Mark wore smugness. Their lawyer had a soft voice and a hard smile, the kind that said, "We're not here to fight. We're just here to win." I didn't wear anything dramatic. Just a dark green blouse, simple slacks, and the necklace Linda gave me for graduation, the one with the tiny silver compass. "So you always know your way back to us," she'd said. I clutched it now like it was armor. The mediator, a woman with kind eyes and a practiced neutral tone, welcomed us and explained the process. "This is an opportunity," she said, "to resolve the dispute with clarity and respect." I wondered if she knew who she was talking to. Angela nodded. "Of course." Mark leaned in like this was just another business deal. Their attorney began. He spoke of hardship, of emotional damage caused by the separation, of shared grief. He used words like reconciliation and entitlement and biological bond like they were bullets lined up for firing. He painted them as victims of circumstance, as parents who had simply made a hard call in a hard time. He called their absence temporary estrangement. I felt Gary's hand grip mine under the table, and then the mediator turned to me. "Emily, you're welcome to respond whenever you're ready." I took a breath that reached all the way into my childhood, and I spoke. "When I was 6 years old," I said, "I watched my father walk out the door without looking back. I watched my mother turn to me and say I'd be better off in state care. And then she left me at a building where no one knew my name." Angela blinked. Mark sat very still. "I didn't see or hear from them for 12 years, I continued. "Not a letter, not a birthday card, not a single check-in." I looked at the lawyer. "They talk about shared suffering, but let me be clear, they weren't there for the suffering." I turned back to Angela and Mark. "You weren't there the night I cried myself to sleep because the other girls at the orphanage stole my teddy bear. You weren't there when I got the flu and had no one to hold my hand at the clinic. You weren't there when I learned to ride a bike, or when I made honor roll, or when I graduated high school. But you're here now." I let the silence hang. "And you didn't come because you missed me. You came because you saw my name on a will." Angela opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. "I'm not angry," I said, though part of me still was. "I'm not even surprised. but I want the record to be clear. You forfeited your role the day you left me at that orphanage." Mark's face flushed. Angela looked down. "I have parents," I said, my voice steady now. "The kind who sat beside my hospital bed, who read me bedtime stories, who taught me what love looks like when it stays." I looked at the mediator. "I'm not interested in mediation. I'm interested in closure." We walked out before they could respond. Gary opened the door for me. Linda waited in the hallway with a thermos of tea and tearful eyes. "You did good, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. I didn't cry, I didn't look back. I had said what needed saying for the little girl in the lavender room, for the teenager who learned how to dream again, for the woman I was still becoming. The dismissal came the very next morning. It was a short email from Mr. Nash, followed by a scanned document from the court clerk in Lexington. Case closed. Petition denied in full. No appeal. No division. No shared suffering. Just. Over, I stared at the ruling in disbelief. Not because I thought they'd win, but because part of me hadn't let go of the idea that somehow, somewhere, the world would still try to split me in half. But this was a full sentence, a final period. They couldn't rewrite the past, and now they couldn't profit from it either. I didn't dance. I didn't shout. I didn't post online. Instead, I walked out to the backyard, our backyard, and stood barefoot in the soft grass while the morning dew clung to my toes. Linda came out a few minutes later with 2 mugs of tea. She handed me the one with the chipped daisy on it, the mug I always used when I was nervous before tests or interviews or storms. "Well," she asked, eyes searching mine. "It's done," I said. "They lost." She didn't say anything for a second. Then she smiled, quiet, proud, relieved. "I never doubted it," she said. "But I know it's not the kind of victory that feels like a parade." I nodded. "It's the kind that feels like silence." Later that day, I made a decision. I returned to Lexington, not to see them, not to revisit the past, but to visit her. Martha Wilkins, my grandmother, the woman who searched, who fought, who never stopped hoping her granddaughter would know she was wanted, even if they never met face to face. I found her resting place in a small family cemetery tucked beside a lake an hour outside the city. The headstone was elegant, understated, surrounded by roses someone, maybe a neighbor, had kept alive through the heat. I knelt down in the grass and placed a single wildflower beside her name. "I got your letter," I whispered. I didn't cry. Not until I read it again, aloud this time, letting the wind carry her words into the trees. "You were never forgotten." I stayed there for hours, talking to her, telling her about the Petersons, the lavender room, the time I won the school essay contest, the way I still couldn't bake cookies without burning the edges. And then I told her my plan, what I decided to do with part of her estate. The next morning, I signed the paperwork. I donated $100,000 to a nonprofit that supports foster youth aging out of the system. Housing, therapy, education, emergency legal services. I called it Martha's Bridge, because that's what she gave me. Bridge to something better. A legacy that meant more than court rulings or bank statements. A promise that love could still echo even if the voice was gone. When the press release went live, a few small outlets picked it up. Lexington Air donates portion of $3 million inheritance to foster youth nonprofit. The photo they used showed me outside the courthouse, smiling, not wide, but real. Linda and Gary stood on either side of me. Mark and Angela never responded. At least, not publicly. But I didn't need their response anymore. Because the truth was, I'd already reclaimed what they took, my name, my story, my worth. The first time I saw the lake house, it was raining. Not a downpour, just a soft, persistent mist, like the sky was remembering something it couldn't quite let go of. Mr. Nash met us at the gate with an umbrella and a worn key. "She loved this place," he said, handing it to me. "Martha came here every summer. Said the lake made her feel close to the parts of life that didn't ask for permission." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but as we drove down the gravel path lined with poplars, I began to understand. The house sat at the edge of the water, faded white siding, wraparound porch, roof missing a few shingles. It looked tired but not abandoned, like it had been waiting for someone to come home. I stepped onto the porch and paused. Something in my chest, something I hadn't named yet, settled. The inside smelled of cedar and old books. Dust hung in the air like memory. In the living room, sunbeams broke through slats in the blinds, casting long golden stripes across a floral couch and a stone fireplace. A photograph sat on the mantel, Martha, I assumed, standing beside the lake with a fishing pole in one hand and a grin in the other. I touched the frame carefully. "Hi," I whispered. "I'm Emily." Over the next few weeks, the lake house became my project. No one asked me to fix it. There was no deadline, no obligation, but something in me needed to restore it, maybe because it was hers, maybe because I wanted to prove that something left behind could still be made beautiful again. Linda helped pick paint samples, sage green for the kitchen cabinets, soft sand for the walls. Gary taught me how to replace broken floorboards and patch window screens. We built shelves together for the upstairs loft, laughing as Buddy tracked mud across freshly cleaned planks. Every room I restored felt like a conversation with Martha. Did you read here by the fire? Did you stand on that dock and watch the sunrise alone? Did you wonder if I'd ever find my way to this place? By the end of summer, the house didn't just look different. It felt ready. I held her memorial on a still September morning. No announcements, no invitations, just the people who mattered. Linda brought white lilies. Gary brought his camera. I brought the letter. We stood under a weeping willow near the dock, the breeze stirring its branches like soft applause. I read aloud, voice steady but aching. "You are my granddaughter, and you were never forgotten." Tears slipped down my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. I wanted to feel every second. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it in a glass box beneath the tree, sealed it with river stones, and whispered, "Thank you." Linda wrapped her arms around me, strong and certain. "She would be proud," she said. "Not because of the money or the house, but because of who you've become." I nodded, because deep down I believed that too. That evening, I sat on the dock alone, feet in the water, stars unfurling above me like a quiet promise. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't someone's abandoned daughter or a name on a case file. I was Emily, the girl who built something beautiful from what she was given, the woman who chose healing over resentment, the granddaughter who showed up, even when it was too late for goodbyes. And somewhere in the stillness, I swear I felt her, just a breath, just a flicker, but real. 10 years later, my office smells like jasmine tea and old pages. There's a lamp in the corner shaped like a tree branch, soft yellow light pooling over the rug. Books line the walls, titles about trauma, healing, hope, and the science of human hearts. A framed photo sits on my desk. It's the four of us, me, Linda, Gary, and Buddy, standing in front of the lake house under the willow tree. I'm in the middle, laughing, wind pulling my hair sideways. The photo's not staged, it's not perfect, but it's everything. The frame reads, "Family is who shows up and stays." I'm a licensed family therapist now. Most of my clients are teenagers. Many are foster youth. Some arrive with a hard stare and their arms crossed tight, like they've already decided not to trust me. I get it. I don't force anything. I don't rush, I let them lead, because I remember how it felt to be 6 years old and invisible, to sleep with one eye open, to flinch at kindness like it might be a trick. I remember the ache of wanting someone, anyone, to show up and stay. So I do, session after session, even when they don't speak, even when they lie, even when they say they hate me. I stay. One girl, Tasha, sat silently for 4 appointments straight. She had a court date pending, bruises on her arms, and a silence so loud it filled the whole room. On the 5th session, she blurted out, "Why do you even care? You're just getting paid." I didn't flinch. I just looked at her and said, "Because someone once stayed for me, and now I get to do the same." She stared at me for a long time, didn't say anything. But the next week she came back. Early. She asked for tea. Martha's Bridge, the nonprofit I started with part of the inheritance, has grown into something I never imagined. We now fund transitional housing for 24 teens aging out of foster care. We run weekend workshops on financial literacy, trauma recovery, and job training. We partner with therapists, caseworkers, mentors. There's even a summer retreat at the lake house. Every August, a group of teens arrives in a van, sleep-deprived and suspicious. They make s'mores. They paint the boathouse. Some cry the first night. Others sneak out to the dock and just stare at the stars. And on the last day, we plant a flower for someone they want to remember or forgive. The willow tree holds dozens now, each one with a story, each one with roots. Sometimes I wonder what Martha would think if she saw it all. The restored house, the teens laughing on her porch, the letters we read out loud to the wind. I hope she'd smile. I hope she'd sit beside me on the swing and say, "You turned pain into shelter." Because that's what I tried to do, and that's what she gave me the chance to become. People ask me if I ever heard from Angela or Mark again. The answer is no. No calls, no letters, no appeals. They vanished as quickly as they returned. But I don't carry anger for them anymore, just distance, just clarity. I don't need apologies from people who once made me feel disposable, because I found people who made me feel extraordinary. There's a drawer in my office I never open in front of anyone. Top right. Wooden, subtle, no lock but sacred all the same. Clients sit across from me all day long. They cry. They whisper secrets no one else knows. They ask, "Does this kind of pain ever go away?" And sometimes on the hardest days I open that drawer, not to escape their stories, but to remind myself how far I've come in mine. Inside are just three things: the letter from Martha, a faded photograph, and the only thing I had that first night at the orphanage, a ragged teddy bear with a frayed pink bow. His name is Mr. Waffles. The letter is yellowed now, soft around the folds from too much touching. "You were never forgotten." I used to read that line over and over when I couldn't sleep. Back then, I clung to it like oxygen, like a hand reaching through time to pull me from the dark. It was the first time anyone from my past had ever chosen me without obligation or guilt. The first time someone loved me across a silence that spanned years. She was gone by the time I knew her name, but her words stitched something back together in me that I didn't even know had torn. The photo is newer, taken at the lake house the first summer we hosted a retreat for foster youth. 3 girls stand beside me on the dock, arms around my shoulders, grinning like they've just stolen the world's best secret. They're loud, messy, brave in ways they haven't even discovered yet. One of them asked me that week if I thought I'd ever be normal. I told her normal was just a word people used when they were scared to be fully human. She rolled her eyes. But the next morning, she wrote "fully human" on her t-shirt in Sharpie. And then there's Mr. Waffles. He's not just a bear. He's a witness. To the trembling 6-year-old left in a hallway full of strangers. To the nights when silence was louder than screams. To the miracle of survival without bitterness. I used to tuck him under my pillow and whisper things to him no one else ever heard. "I'm still here. Maybe someone will come. Maybe love is real somewhere." He never answered, but he never left. That mattered more. Sometimes I wonder what Angela and Mark would think if they saw all of this. The office, the nonprofit, the walls full of thank you notes from kids who once thought they were invisible. I wonder if it would hit them, the irony that the girl they left behind ended up creating a family bigger than biology ever could. But I don't think about them much anymore. Not out of anger, out of peace. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with softness instead of ache. There's a ritual I do now, every year on the anniversary of the day I left the orphanage. I go to the lake house. Alone. I sit under the willow tree. The one where we planted flowers for the ones we've lost. The ones who couldn't stay. The ones who taught us something by leaving. I bring a copy of Martha's letter and a new journal. I write a message to that 6-year-old girl. Each year, it changes. But the message always ends the same. You are not what they did to you. So now I'll ask you what I ask every teen who walks into my therapy room. What part of your story are you still holding on to? And what has it taught you about who you really are? Drop it in the comments. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Because someone out there might need your truth to light their way forward. And because you might need to remember, you're not broken. You're becoming.